Great. So this session is basically talking about the bbUI toolkit that Tim Neal mentioned this morning in the presentation, as well as Alice.js, which we'll get into as well. And what bbUI is it really is a toolkit we provided as an example to provide a native look and feel for your application across all the different phones and OSs, and really just provides to the user what, gives them the experience they would expect from your application on whichever device you're using. So again, why does it matter? Well, because as a user, when I'm using an application, I don't want to be fumbling around. I want to, I want it to behave how I expect. Again, this is pretty much, I guess you could say an experiment. We've got partnerships. We're working with people like Jquery Mobile to provide a theme for them as well. We'll have some screenshots of the theme as well, so you can see. If you're not familiar with it and have only seen it at the session this morning, then got a lot of information for you. But it's pretty much, as I said, a toolkit. Its main purpose is to help you optimize the look and feel of your application, and does this in several different ways, which we'll go over here. So again, the goals of the toolkit are to provide that native BlackBerry look and feel for your application. Allows you to pretty much keep the same code between different OS versions, so you don't have to do a lot of work. The toolkit will do it all for you using hardware-accelerated CSS. So if I'm on a BlackBerry 7 phone, it's going to scale things a certain way, change the font size, and if I'm on the new Dev Alpha, it'll change it accordingly, all for you. Again, it falls in line with all the BlackBerry UX guidelines. You saw all the different way the radio buttons move and all that this morning, all in that presentation. It's very similar to how the native Cascades looks and feels. So what's really cool about this is it does screen management for you. So if you've used a framework like Jquery Mobile, for example, has anyone used that right now? Or does anybody use bbUI already as well? Or one person? All right. So yeah, the screen management, as you know with Jquery Mobile, it will load in fragments of screens and really greatly optimize the way your application runs. And the way bbUI works is a similar process, which we'll go over as well. But it handles all that for you. You can pop and push screens, go back and forward to the previous or the next screen in the application as well. So really it's about optimizing, making sure that application works properly and as expected by the user. It's open source. It's available on GitHub. You can hack away at it if you decide you like it. But it's mostly there just to show you that what can be done. And so the philosophy behind it, it's as I said, it scales with the platform. It'll detect how big is the screen, what size should this be, how big should this button be on this device, on a playbook, versus a Dev Alpha. It takes all that away from you. You don't have to worry about that, which is really nice. Similar to Jquery Mobile, it uses custom data attributes. So if you're familiar with those, the way you set up your divs and all that, that'll be something you're familiar with. We've got some code examples of that as well. And probably the most important part of this is the off-DOM manipulation that it provides for your page. There's a couple different events that we can listen to, which we'll show as well. But why this is important is because anytime you're modifying something that's live on the page in the DOM, it's really, really expensive on resources. In my case, I've crashed out my own applications because I was trying to do this before I used bbUI. So very, very important feature of it, which we will go over. The current state of bbUI, as I said, it's beta, experiment if you wish. Not sure when, do you know when the latest version was released? 9.3, it's fairly recent. Again, it's up on GitHub, completely open sourced. If you have any issues, requests, any comments, feel free to go there, provide them. And the community is starting to really get involved in the project, which is really nice. We've got some developers that have contributed things like swipe down menus, which we actually, I believe, came from similar to that demo we showed earlier with the web inspector with the swiping down. So yeah, it's a really cool project, and I think by the end of this, you'll have more than one person raising their hand to say who's used it before. So it's still evolving. It's a work in progress. So obviously, try to minimize any impact that would have to an application if you decide to use it. But you know, as with everything else, sometimes things change a bit, and you have to modify it accordingly. But that's where it's at currently. I think probably the best thing to do, rather than show you in a static slide, is to show you some live demos here. So we'll be switching to HTML, please.
No, not HTML, the Elmo. But that's good. All right. So, volume's a bit high. As we mentioned, bbUI is on GitHub. Not only can you get the library and the source for how that project was put together, but you can also get this samples folder. And what I did was I took this and packaged it up into a WebWorks application. And I think that, let me just quickly check. I do. I have the exact same sample packaged on Playbook. You see. There it is. The exact same application, but as Chad mentioned, some of the UI controls scale differently. Like some are designed for platform specific. I take advantage of the UI guidelines that were defined for BlackBerry 10 compared to Playbook. As you mentioned, the users expect the experience to be consistent. They want your app to have a great experience. They don't actually care that you used web technologies to build it. That's really the last thing in their mind. They want the features and the experience. So that's what this library is designed to implement. So do you want to just go through this, huh?
Yeah, we'll go through, I guess I'll
quickly show just a couple demos.
We'll start up at...
so you can do things
like there you go, yeah.
The context menu, and there's that concept of peak, and actually, showing it. This looks like a BlackBerry 10 application, doesn't it? Would you as the user know that this was created completely with web technologies? Maybe not. Oh.
And again, in your source, it's all just basically a bunch of different divs, and you're specifying what is this div? Is this a button? Is this a context menu? An action bar? So it supports things like, we've got the overflows, we've got the tab overflow on the left there.
On the left, yeah. Come on.
So really, really, really powerful toolkit. Yep, question?
Try joining this in Android. Would it look the same?
On an Android?
Well, how do you mean? Like within a PhoneGap application?
Yeah, like if you import this library, would these UI elements also look the same on other?
Well, they'd be styled, like they follow CSS definitions, so they'd look some way. But I would guess that it wouldn't work on Android. There's certain BlackBerry platform-specific features that the library uses that would fail. That wouldn't work. Good question, though. All right.
Move on to some other stuff.
Yeah, let's go back to the... Sorry, you wanted to show us some more?
Yeah, maybe we'll show the radio buttons, I guess, maybe. If you can find those down there. It's probably important to note that some of these are BlackBerry 10 specific, where you have the back button and all that.
Easy to see.
Going to cooperate?
Yeah, it's been fussy today. I don't know why, if it likes my hands or not.
It's cookies. Cookies on your hands.
It's the chocolate. Yeah.
So I guess the goal here is to show that there you go. You can see it sliding and transitioning just like you would in a native application as well, written in cascades.
And all that's done with CSS3 transformation.
Yep, it's all hardware accelerated. Sorry, question?
Can you invoke other native BB10 apps from WebWorks app? Like, so say there was a link to a PDF or something you wanted to like open up the native PDF.
Yes, you can. If you just, I can actually show you the code for how to do that if you want. We actually have something published in GitHub called Invoke that shows you how to register your app, not only as an invocable target, but also how to launch into other apps. One of the specific examples is PDFs. So it's the new BlackBerry 10 invocation framework that we've sort of ported into WebWorks architecture, and it's incredible. It's amazingly powerful. And it's just going to get better as it's extended more into the sharing framework. And you saw on our arrivals board, we're talking about this principle of cards, and that's just going to take that to a whole new level. It's pretty cool. All right, get back to the deck.
Yep, we switch it back to the laptop. All right, so we did our demo there. So a couple important things to note in order to take advantage of all the features, bbUI. Here's your base requirements for your config XML. So all this is really well documented on GitHub as well. So don't feel like you have to jot it all down or anything right away. But
and this is why I was saying I don't think this would run on Android because it's expecting that the BlackBerry system event is available, the focus mode navigation is there, and so on, and even system menus are built in there. So without it, I expect it might still start, but you just wouldn't have all the features and functionality working as expected.
So probably it doesn't necessarily apply. Not everyone's obviously used this in the past, but what a new part of bbUI is the bb-init function that needs to be called when your application loads. And what you do, you're basically setting up the options for the toolkit. You're able to override. We'll see the on back key. By default, bbUI will handle it with they'll pop or push a screen. Like if you want to go back to the previous screen, you press back. It'll handle all that for you. But you can customize that too if you want it to behave a little differently. See further down, mostly we have styling, colors, whatnot, how you want it to look. There's one important one down here, two important ones, the on-screen ready function and the on-DOM ready function, which we'll go over in a bit more in depth, I think coming up here. So as I said, your page is basically laid out as an HTML fragment. And each screen or different web page that you have, usually an app will start with, say, an index file, but say I have a settings.html that I want to load. So rather than have the whole header and everything in the settings page, it's just a fragment. And bbUI knows what to load because we specify the data BB type as a screen for that page. Also, this is also documented really well online as well. Comes with some transition effects. Right now on BB10, we have a slide effect. You can slide pages back and forth. The default is basically just the fade effect. Just note that it's not supported on BlackBerry 5 or 6, just performance-wise, just to get that really good solid feel of it. Also, new for the BB10 and Playbook, we can have a back button automatically inserted at the top if you want to use that type of navigation. So you go to a page, obviously there's no back keys, it's touchscreen, so it'll automatically put that up there for you if you wish. And that's about that. So the screen code, here's a little bit more about the screen code. Here we're basically just declaring this one page as a screen, as you can see by the data BB type. And basically by specifying the different properties on here, the different data types for your divs, you're telling bbUI this is a title bar. This may be a context menu at the bottom, or sorry, not a context, an action bar at the bottom. So it's all declared with the different data BB types. So here we're getting a little more in depth into the push and pop that I was referring to. bbUI traps the back key by default for you. Like I said, if you want to override that, you can in the options. It's important to note that it loads the screens with AJAX, the fragments of the screens rather with AJAX. And just really helps with performance by doing it that way. Again, you're not rebuilding everything on the page when you're loading a new screen, so it really saves on memory and CPU and whatnot. Now these are the two really important functions here, events rather. We have the on-screen ready event, which is happens when the screen is ready. It's not inserted into the DOM yet, so the user's not seeing this screen. So you want to do something, if you want to fire certain events that take place before the user sees it, this is the time to do it, because as I said before, once that's in the DOM and visible to the user, the memory is really tough. It really uses a lot of memory. It's not how you want to do it. You don't want to be changing elements on the screen once they're visible to the user if you can avoid doing that.
Not working?
In there. So here we go again. This is just a bit of a code snippet here showing us calling the on-screen ready. And we'll see. In this case, it's just saying this page is ready. So now we can do something. Styling or scripting. So what we can do, which is also cool in here, we can have screen-specific JavaScript or CSS loading. So you don't have to include it all at the start of your application when you load the index file. If you want the settings screen to look a certain way, different than the other ones, you can have inline CSS if you want, or you can call a completely separate file and include it that way, just like you would in a normal web page. Also mentioned this earlier here, the fonts are all scaled accordingly to the device. bbUI will detect it and make it look how the user would expect it to look on the device. On a playbook, obviously the font size is going to be different than on a small screen, so it takes that work and does it for you and just makes it much easier for you to work with the toolkit. And here's an example of just the inline styling. Here we have an inline script as well, just to touch back on that previous note there.
Yeah, so if you had 10 different screens as part of your application, each of those screens can target specific style sheets or style definitions, or even JavaScript code. So if they're independent, think of it like modules or so on, you can have it pulled in on demand. And that makes your application very performant. You know, it's not using more memory than it really needs at any given time, and lightweight. Yeah.
Really cool thing, it supports the trackpad navigation for you. Has anybody tried to set the BlackBerry on focus and all that themselves manually, different elements to use the trackpad? So if you have, you'll note it can be a little tedious to do sometimes. So bbUI does this for you, adds the highlighting so the user knows they're hovering over a button right now, removes it, of course, when they're off that button or element. So just basically another thing the toolkit does for you to make your life much easier. And here we'll start to get back into the kind of specific features we're trying to show in the demo there.
Why don't we demo this? If you stand here, and then we can see the slides. Can we have the HTML, please? I've switched to the playbook, running the exact same sample application. So all the features are there. I just want you actually to be able to see live what we're talking about. So far away, whenever you're ready.
Yep. Do you want to start?
Yep.
I'll see we're looking at these are the BlackBerry 10 grid lists, which depending how you have it set up, you can actually set a flag to have the playbook be styled as BB10, I believe. Let's see where we can start here.
I think the demo gods are not happy with me today.
Yeah, we've upset somebody.
Just a moment. Let me try this again. Landscape. There we are. All right, so this is a grid list. And you can see the way it's laid out is think of it as rows. So you can add content to a given row, and bbUI will scale that appropriately to the available screen size. So this row has one element in it, images, right? But we can easily throw two elements in there, and bbUI will automatically scale those appropriately, and so on as we get more, 3 images. If you don't know Tim Neal, he's a very interesting fellow. This is actually his garage. That's a real Batmobile that he's building when he has so much free time. So, yeah. When he's not building JavaScript libraries and defining the BlackBerry 10 roadmap platform, he's building Batmobiles. Pretty cool guy.
We have time for, want to show the activities?
Yeah, activity indicator.
Yeah, I really like the activity indicators. They, again, follow right in line with what you would expect to see of native development too. Mm-hmm. So really cool. 3 different sizes to choose from, and it handles everything for you again with hardware accelerated CSS. And
yeah, and there's also a light and a dark theme principle in BlackBerry 10. And right now we're looking at the dark theme, the blue actually. But this sample project is designed to randomize whatever the theme is. So let me see if just restarting it is going to change it. Maybe see the light theme. No, okay. Sorry, it's a yellow color. So it just sort of automatically handles that for you, and you just simply need to say what theme is active, and then throw these activity indicators in there. Okay?
It would show the toggle buttons are pretty cool here too.
Right.
So these would be good for, option screen settings, that kind of thing.
Can you see that when you actually activate it, there's like a little
glow.
A glow or a pulse? I don't know if it's hard to see in the back. It might be, but it is there.
These also have functions or events triggered right into them. You can, have your on-change events and whatnot. So do something if this gets turned on or off.
Mm-hmm.
How are we doing there?
I think we're good. Sliders?
Sliders. If you ever use the input type for a range, have a range slider. It's styled really, really nicely. Looks real slick.
Mm-hmm.
Radio buttons. We showed you guys the radio buttons there already.
The drop downs I think are relevant. Where's that one? Input types. Input controls. So we've got just regular buttons with different states. So the active state, we can combine images with text in those buttons or just have an image button on its own. You have a big button that takes up the whole screen. But then also, anyone who's done work with HTML select boxes, you get a cascading drop down that appears over your content. On the BlackBerry 10 platform, the UI guideline states that it expands the rest of the content on the page, so it doesn't overlay it, but it pushes it down, kind of like a waterfall. And you'll notice that there's some neat subtle effects. Like look at the top right-hand corner of the drop-down box. There's this little animation. And it also should update with your selection. So I pick Arial and Ali Mono. It's updated there. So if you can imagine, like as a web developer, all the code you'd have to write in order to achieve this effect on your own, or maybe pull in like a jQuery plugin, UI plugin or something like that, or you can just use bbUI and it'll do it for you.
I think a cool thing to note is the screen menus. I don't know if we have a demo on there, but basically it'll handle your menus too. So if someone's on a BlackBerry 5, 6, or 7 phone and they press the menu button, you're going to have the little menu pop up on the bottom right there.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll style this accordingly for Playbook or BB10 as well. So
that's a good point. So running on a Playbook now, you swipe down from the top and it looks like that. I'm just going to switch the control. Just a moment. Where are we? Menus. Does it look the same? Okay, looks the same. For some reason.
Okay.
I was expecting a different profile. It might be in the next branch of the thing. It should look more like a BlackBerry 10 menu because the framework is supposed to handle that for you. All right. What's next?
Progress indicators, I think, would be a good one to show. If you want to show a feedback to your user that maybe this image is being uploaded, something's happening, it's waiting, some sort of from 0 to 100% type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. It'll handle nicely looking progress for you as well. So just another way to style it, give your app, good feel and look that people are expecting.
Cool. And then there's even like custom stuff in there, like if you're working with BBM, where'd you go? And you want to have, content. Oh, it didn't scale very nicely. Look at that. It's easy to wrap your content in like a BBM speech bubble. Quite easily. Anything else that people would be interested in seeing? So we got pill buttons, so easily switch between tabs. Nice way to organize your information. Let's see.
We could go on and on showing.
Yeah.
There's so much in this. It's hard to squish into just a short session. So absolutely, if it's intriguing at all, definitely go to GitHub. Check it out. If you're really into it, contribute. It's for the benefit of everybody that uses it. Just an absolutely great toolkit. So.
All right. Switch back to the laptop, please.
Yep. So basically just the future of what they've got planned for the toolkit right now. Just going to add some more controls, even more controls, I guess I should say, for BlackBerry 10. Being able to dynamically manipulate contents of screens. So say you're doing a poll to a server, you want to load in some content and be able to scroll up and down on the screen, have that content load nice and fluidly. So we're looking into doing that for you as well. The focus order, obviously we're really focused on BlackBerry 10 right now, Playbook, and then see the previous platforms, which work on bbUI as well, but obviously we're here to see the new stuff. So again, please go to GitHub if you're interested, check it out, package up the samples folder, as Adam said, on your dev alphas, and see what you can do. Go from there. Is there any questions related to bbUI right now?
Do either of you have the samples running on your previous generation devices, or do you send?
Yeah, I've used it in my app called Lens Boost on BB7. Yeah. Before it was crashing all the time. I was trying to load everything manually, change all the elements on the screen while they were on the screen. Like it would generate thumbnails of images and all that in my application. So when I was doing that and adding them to the screen, it would crash out. Or when I go to the settings page, it would crash out. Or it was just terrible for performance the way I personally designed it. It was my own fault. And then I had used Jquery Mobile as well, which was another great choice. So I think it's important to mention we're not saying use this necessarily, but it's out there. We're working with other people as well to provide this experience on other frameworks that you might be interested in too. But the way it handles the screens and everything, absolutely recommend it or something like it for the older phones for sure, for memory management and all that. Mm-hmm. So yes, it works good. I think that's it.
Yeah.
All right, next I believe Adam's going to speak about Alice.
Sounds about right. Cool. I'll take the clicker. So Alice.js, this is another experimental library that had some real good success once it got out there in the open. This was a concept put together by our web director. His name is Laurent Hassan. I don't know if anyone has ever seen or heard of him. If you've seen him, you know who he is. Bright blue hair. I think it might be bright red now. But he often does keynotes and high-profile speaking opportunities, so you probably have seen him. He had this pet project in the back of his mind that was, especially as CSS3 came to be and evolved and introduced transitions and animations, and it was, let's make a library or give developers an easy way of transforming those animations and effects into a way that they can include in their application in a really easy way. So he came up with the idea of Alice, and this is a lightweight, independent CSS engine. It's a library for adding visual effects to your application. Okay, so it doesn't actually add UI controls, like there's no checkbox control or radio button or those sorts of things, but it's designed to introduce or include CSS3-based animations, transformations, and effects in whatever application content you're building. So say you want to include a really cool fade-in effect or swipe down or a wobble or some sort of movement in your app. Alice makes that incredibly easy to do. So I'd like to show you a couple demos of that in a moment. The idea behind it is that all of these features should be doable with one line of code. So you include your library, you grab your element, and then you apply an Alice transformation to it, and magic happens. Like it applies those effects to it. And they also recognize the need for organic behavior. It has to feel natural. It has to look like this is a real world natural object that might be moving. So it can't have robotic movement. It can't be the exact same linear transformation every time. So the library takes into account some randomizations to apply the effect so that it doesn't have any staleness to it. So it looks fresh and exciting each time that you start your page and say all the page elements sort of fall onto it. A good example might be a photo gallery app. What happens when you say you want to start up your application and all the pictures in it sort of collapse onto the page like leaves? Alice would make that really easy to do because each of those elements can be targeted individually and applied like a random animation effect to it so that they can be applied. Just like bbUI, Alice is open source. It's under the Apache 2 license, so if you're interested in taking it, making it better, worse or whatever, it's up to you to do it. We really invite you to do so. I think it's 300 forks or watchers at least on GitHub right now, so there's a great deal of interest. It got picked up by JavaScript Weekly a few months ago, so it's the awareness and visibility into it has exploded, and it's recognized as a really compelling library for adding cool effects to your application. Obviously, the philosophy behind it, I've already touched on the simplicity one. We want it to be really easy to use. Even though it's a JavaScript library, it has to have a feel of its CSS likeness. So whatever verbiage or terminology that's being used in the library itself has to look and somehow feel like it's actual CSS. So the wording is going to be consistent there. It's not just for images. So we may see a lot of or similar frameworks out there in the wild that are designed for image manipulation. Flux Slider is a really good example of one of those. Amazing example. I have a demo of that I'd like to show too. But that's designed just for images. What if you want to apply animations to a button? So you click a button and it maybe wobbles a little bit to give feedback. You couldn't do that with libraries like those. You can with Alice because it's designed to apply these effects to any element in the DOM. Okay? Another principle is it has to be rich. We can't just provide 1, 2, or maybe 3 cool effects. Let's provide like an infinite collection of them. And that's what they've actually done. We'll show you an effects builder tool that they put together where you can combine different effects into like this master effect, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, this randomization, this organic behavior that I've described, that every effect is somehow mysteriously and magically different and unique in a way that it doesn't get stale. And it's exciting to use over and over and over again. Yes, let's see a demo. On which device, though? On the HDMI, please. So again, just like bbUI, there is a samples folder within the Alice repo in GitHub. If you were to actually load that page directly, you'd see this. And it kind of describes what it is and shows some source code. It's kind of difficult to see with the color. I apologize for that. But most importantly, there's this demos link here. Okay. And on that page lists a few of the effects that can be created or that are actually built into the Alice library. And so I just want to show a quick number of those here. One is the bounce. Of course, any page element that should bounce in and out in a 3-dimension. There's also the dance effect, the drain. You can imagine how that might translate into a use case in your app, right? Maybe you have like a delete function or some sort of destroy feature or a game, right? It wouldn't be great with just one line of code. You can apply that to your application. Fade in, of course, you can apply this to any element in the page. So jQuery has similar effects like this, like the screen transitions. Entire pages of content that fade in and out can be similarly done at a lower level. There's the hinge. So think of a rotation from a certain point of reference, which you can define. So this one uses x25, y0, but this can be anywhere relative to this element. So you have a great deal of control over it. You notice there's other parameters like duration. So this is 1 second repeated infinitely. But what if you wanted a 3-second, 3 repeat? You can do that quite easily too. See, there's page flip, pendulum, which is kind of like the hinge, but with a different frame of reference. This is a wild one. Phantom zone. race flag. I've tried to come up with a use case for this, and I just can't. It's a ridiculous effect, but it just kind of demonstrates what you can do with this library. You know, your imagination is really the limit of what you can do. Sliding, of course, which is another good one. Spinning, very popular. This one's kind of cool, like a toss. So what we need if you like maybe a menu feature on the right side of your page, you hit A, B, or C, and that's how your content transitions in. Might be a neat way to do it. Twirl and wobble. Wobble's my favorite. I don't know why. I just like wobbling, I guess. But each of these pages in the site has a more advanced page, and it lets you mess around with the different parameters that you can apply to each of these effects. So how would my wobble effect look if I rotated them more? Oh, that's crazy. Or if I change the duration. There's half a second. Does anyone have motion sickness before I go too deeply into this? All right. What about changing the randomness? Oh, it still thinks I'm up there. All right. Do that. And then we can change the, oh, my big fat fingers. The different timing. So I mentioned like the linear transformations, but there's also like different effects that you could do, many different ones. So ease in and out is a real popular one. Just describes how quickly the animation starts and stops. And you'll see we got like a bunch of different images, but this is a real form element, right? And I can prove it by, right? So it's live content you're applying these effects to, which is pretty cool. And just for fun, let's go crazy. All right, I got to get out of here now. There we go. So that was just wobble. And then finally zoom. Okay, I think that's it for now. I'll go back to the laptop, please. The code looks like this. So here's your web app. You know, you've got an image or an input box or whatever, and you include a reference to the Alice library. There's a core piece, and then the effects plugins, which go there. Then you just get a reference to this library, alice.init. And so you have this, it could be a global reference or a local reference. And then you apply your effect to that. You say alice_library.wobble or .rotate or hinge or whatever. And you pass it in an ID of your page element. So this is the image or the input, and then the list of parameters. And that's all there is to it. So it's supposed to be very straightforward. One line of code, boom, right there. And you'll notice that the parameters you pass in translate very nicely into their equivalent CSS syntax. So if you were to do set up an animation in CSS, you'd probably use terminology like 1,000 milliseconds, ease in and out, center this, and some sort of random variable. Right? This is direct visualization of those principles of the library. And there's the likeness, right? So here's the actual Alice JavaScript call. If this was same effect was translated into CSS, it would probably look like this. Or you can split it up into separate effects like that. So I went through a couple of the examples and I showed you there. Drain, fade, hinge, whatever. But there's this builder site where you can create your own, and it's incredibly powerful. And I'd like to just quickly show that to you right now, if Wi-Fi is going to work for me, of course. Cross your fingers. Come on, Wi-Fi. There we go. So all the effects that I showed you are there on the left, and you can go race flag, and there it is, or slide, or so on. But then you can build your own and immediately see the line of JavaScript that you want there at the bottom. So instead of an ease, let's go ease in, I guess, quartic. No, that's too crazy. Cubic. We'll move to the right. Oh my God, there's so many different effects. Direction, normal, place state, and then you go, where's the apply settings? And there's my custom effect that I just created right there. So, like I said, your imagination is really all you need to play around with this tool and build some really cool stuff. And there's the code for this effect that I just did. So if you were just to copy this and plug it into your own app, you would get this effect. Cool, huh? Oh, yeah, let me see if I can do this quickly. So this definitely deserves some credit. Flux Slider is what I mentioned earlier. It's a very similar library to Alice. One last time, just the HTML5, and I'll show you it. This is something that was created by Joe Lambert out in the UK. He's joined us at a few other developer events before, and I hope to get him presenting on stage sometime. But he designed this library to apply cool effects to images. So you can do things like bars. See how that's split up, which is kind of cool. Or blinds, or concentric circles. Some really neat effects that you can add into your content just to enhance it, to add those moments of charm and those rich sort of experiences, all done in web. This will work in a WebWorks app. This is actually running as its own WebWorks application. And it gets some really cool stuff. Tile, bars, and so on. Okay, how are we for time? Oh, we're 5 minutes over. All right, cool. Any questions about Alice? Yes, sir.
Is it cross-platform? Will it run on a browser?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it should. It was designed to be, cross-platform. I haven't actually played around with it a lot on different platforms, but it definitely should. Oh, I haven't used Firefox in a while. There you go. But yeah, it's not BlackBerry specific. If that'll help answer that question. So, if you want to use Alice to build an iPhone web app, you can. It's definitely not going to permit you from doing that. Oh, this is crazy. Any other questions? Yeah, there we go. Cool.